Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It is Sunday, and guess what? You are here in the right location to get the weekly recap of all the top stories throughout the week, conveniently located in one location right here. This is for the week of January 12th, 2026. The best of, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy, and remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
And first on the docket, Barry Morphew. That's right. Barry Morphew appeared in court today and formally pled not guilty to the first-degree murder of his wife, Suzanne Morphew, who vanished back on Mother's Day in 2020. Now, a jury trial has been scheduled for October 26th. Now, although I haven't looked at the minute orders, he either told or waived speedy trial to accept that October date. Why? Remember, once you say not guilty, the state then has 6 months from that date to get you to trial, right? So January, so you got February, March, April, May, June, July. So October is outside the speedy trial date. Therefore, he would have had to waive speedy trial or toll speedy trial to accept that trial date, more than likely for scheduling issues for the attorneys. Anyway, the arraignment took place at the Alamosa County Courthouse, which is 40 miles south of Saguache County, where Suzanne Morphew's remains were discovered back in September of 2023. Now, obviously, this case has had a lot of attention and interest from true crime followers online, prompted by the court to impose strict limits on public access to live streaming proceedings after earlier hearings were recorded and shared without authorization. We told you all about that. There was that JR Investigates guy. Clearly states when you sign into the Colorado website, when you view cases, that you cannot stream, you cannot record it, you can be held in contempt. Well, the court said, hey, there are a couple of bad actors here. And instead of punishing those bad actors, because, well, really, they're in a different state, it's going to be really difficult for me to get them here, I'll just punish everybody so that you can't watch the proceedings live. And they're going to limit us to actually stream them as well. So just remember, ladies and gentlemen, when you mess up, you affect everybody in that regard. And if it says don't do it, well, do you really want to blow it and be held in contempt? Probably not. Anyway, Morphew, who is free on a $3 million bond, attended the hearing, obviously in civilian clothes because he's out of custody. Now, his attorney, David Beller, a guy that I know, entered the not guilty plea on his client's behalf and requested a waiver of the statutory right to the trial within 180 days, 6 months. And Beller explained that the volume of discovery material in this case and the anticipated length of the trial made it impractical to proceed within that time frame. Now, Morphew confirmed to the judge that he understood that he has a right to that trial within 6 months and agreed to the waiver. Now, this marks the second time that Mr. Morphew has faced murder charges in connection with his wife's death. He was initially arrested back in 2021 by then 11th Judicial District Attorney Linda Stanley, who gave a masterclass in malpractice, which got her disbarred and some of her other attorneys sanctioned by attorney regulation. Ultimately, those charges that Ms. Stanley brought were dismissed without prejudice back in April of 2022, shortly before a trial was to commence. And like I said, the prosecutor screwed it up and they failed to meet court-ordered deadlines as it relates to Suzanne's Morphew body that had not been yet located at that time. There were lots of discrepancies. And they also tried to go after a judge because they didn't like the rulings that they got. It was amateur hour. So like I said, Stanley was disbarred in 2024 in regards to her management of the Morphew prosecution, citing as the significant factor. Among the ethical violations were unauthorized media interviews with true crime content creators, and an attempt to investigate the presiding judge over unfavorable rulings. And yes, one of those interviews that she actually did was with Mike King of Profiling Evil, and I couldn't believe that she was saying what she did on that show. He actually testified at her disciplinary hearing. Anyway, the investigation advanced significantly back in 2023 when the state police actually located Suzanne Morphew's remains during an unrelated search south of Moffat County. Anyway, a 2024 autopsy revealed traces of an animal tranquilizer known as BAM in her system, a substance that investigators say that other than maybe a few vets in the entire western portion of the United States, the only other person that had that was Barry Morphew, and he had access through his work. Now, following a grand jury indictment, Morphew was rearrested in Arizona in 2025, ultimately extradited back to Colorado. He secured release after posting the $3 million bond with the assistance of a bail bond company and supporters. Now, the couple's two daughters supported his pretrial release, and Morphew provided substantial cash collateral. His legal team has declined to disclose the origin of those funds. Now, what's interesting in that regard is, listen, his attorneys were originally court appointed. Mr. Beller and his co-counsel. But obviously, if you can post a $3 million bond, you're not indigent. So he has since retained them. And the filing that Mr. Beller put with the court was, hey, Judge, we're no longer court appointed. When the money runs out, we'll let you know, and we'll ask to be court appointed again. Now, he didn't say those exact words, but that's really what he said, because if you can afford a $3 million bond, you can afford to pay your attorneys. So anyway, the case now proceeds under the new prosecutorial team, with trial preparations expected to extend over the coming months. It's going to be an interesting case, ladies and gentlemen. I see this one going to trial. I do not see any kind of a guilty plea in this particular case with Mr. Morphew, unless it is such a smoking good deal that he cannot turn it down, like some sort of, reckless manslaughter, which would be, I think, a class 4 felony, 2 to 6, maybe credit time served or something along those lines. But I doubt it. Guess is, if there's going to be an offer, they would make an offer of second-degree murder, which would be 16 to 48. And when you're 50-something years old, it's a life sentence anyway. So my prediction is this will finally go to trial unless the prosecution screws it up like they did last time. Let's hope they get it right. Alan Jackson. Yep, that's right. Alan Jackson is back, even though he's not even on the Nick Reiner case anymore. That's right. The prominent defense attorney who recently withdrew from representing Nick Reiner in the double murder case involving Reiner's parents, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner, has reiterated his public statements that Nick Reiner is not guilty under California law. Wow. Of course he is presumed not guilty. That is a statement, a factual statement under the law, which is absolutely correct. What's he going to say? Oh, yeah, I think he's guilty. No, of course not. Anyway, speaking on the Hot Mics podcast with Billy Bush, Jackson stood firmly by his courthouse remarks made after formally withdrawing from the case on January 7th. And he emphasized that his declaration was grounded in fundamental principles of the U.S. legal system. The presumption of innocence. That's right. Under the laws of the state of California, he is not guilty, Jackson stated. What I said is the truth. He explained that his statement was intended to counter widespread public speculation and to clarify that until proven otherwise in a court of law, every defendant, including Nick Reiner, is legally not guilty. Now remember, the presumption of innocence enshrined in California law and the United States Constitution requires the prosecution to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And no defendant is considered guilty simply because charges have been filed. I agree with Alan Jackson on that, but I mean, that's like the master of the obvious type of statement, okay? But he did it at the time for flair. He did it for headlines. He wasn't just, oh yeah, under the law, he's guilty. Or he didn't just say under the law, he is not guilty and given the presumption of innocence. He said it emphatically, which of course he is making an accurate statement, but come on. Let's be realistic, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Reiner is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But the reason why people want to know and hear about from Mr. Jackson was the very thing he declined to elaborate on. And that was the specific reason for his withdrawal, citing only circumstances beyond our control and ethical constraints that prevent further disclosure. He stressed that the reason for stepping aside do not alter his belief in Reiner's legal status or his ongoing commitment to Reiner's best interest. Now, for those who don't know, Nick Reiner faces 2 counts of first-degree murder in connection with the stabbing deaths of his parents, whose bodies were discovered in their Brentwood mansion on December 14th of 2025. Reiner was arrested hours later near the University of Southern California and remains in custody at the Twin Towers Correctional Facility. He is now represented by a public defender and is scheduled for an arraignment on February 23rd of 2026. And if convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole and potentially the death penalty, which is about slim to none in this particular case. Now, like I said, while Jackson's statements have fueled some discussion about possible defenses, including the potential of a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, such a finding, if successful, would not equate to acquittal or release. Under California law, a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity typically results in commitment to a state psychiatric facility until the individual is deemed no longer a danger to themselves or society. And as a reminder, the Reiner family has declined to provide further comment, expressing only trust in the legal process. We'll continue to follow that one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure Alan Jackson, whether he's on the case or not, will be there to let us know his thoughts about it as well. We'll obviously continue to follow the case of Nick Reiner, and we'll see if the public defenders remain on the case. Somehow, I think they're going to. I think it's not that the estate or the family of Mr. Nick Reiner doesn't have the money to pay for a high-powered defense team. I think they're just choosing not to. Actor Timothy Busfield surrenders on charges of child sexual abuse. Now, he maintains his innocence, and he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. But actor and director Timothy Busfield, who is 68, turned himself into police in Albuquerque, New Mexico on January 13th following the issuance of an arrest warrant related to allegations of child sexual abuse. Now, Busfield faces 2 counts of criminal sexual contact with a minor and 1 count of child abuse stemming from incidents reportedly involving 2 young twin boys during the production of the Fox series The Cleaning Lady back in 2022. According to the arrest warrant and criminal complaint, the alleged victims were 7 and 8 years old at the time of the reported incidents, which spanned from November 22 through spring of 2024. The boys, who were child actors on the show, claimed Busfield inappropriately touched them over their clothes during breaks in filming. Their mother filed a police report back in October of 2025, prompting an investigation by the Albuquerque Police Department. The case initially came to light in November of 2024 when a doctor at the University of New Mexico hospital reported suspicion of sexual abuse, though it did not initially meet criteria for further action. Now, Busfield, who served as director and executive producer on the series from its 2nd season onward, denied any wrongdoing in a video statement obtained shortly before his surrender. He said, quote, "I did not do anything to those little boys," end quote. He asserted that he is going to confront these lies. They are horrible, and he is going to fight them with a great team. He knows that he will be exonerated, and he said once again that they're all lies. Well, Busfield's civil attorney, a guy by the name of Larry Stein, described the accusations as false and deeply troubling, suggesting a motive of revenge. The criminal complaint references statements indicating the boy's mother expressed intent to seek retribution after a younger actor replaced her sons in the show's final season. Now, Stein highlighted an independent investigation commissioned by Warner Brothers Television, conducted by attorneys Christina McGovern, which interviewed approximately a dozen witnesses and found no evidence supporting the claims of inappropriate conduct or Busfield being alone with the children. Now, Warner Brothers issued a statement emphasizing its priority for the safety and cast and the crew, particularly minors, and confirmed that they are cooperating in every way with law enforcement. The company has noted that it has processes for promptly investigating misconduct allegations. And in a police interview, Busfield acknowledged occasional playful physical action with the boys, such as tickling or lifting them, but insisted these occurred in the presence of others and were not inappropriate in any way. Now, obviously, this can have a significant impact on anyone's career, lifestyle, livelihood. So anyway, following the issuance of the warrant, the United States Marshals Service assisted in locating Mr. Busfield. And then, like I said, he was booked into the detention center without a bond. A mugshot was later released with a neutral expression. And the allegations have obviously led to professional repercussions already, including NBC's decision to shelve an upcoming episode of Law and Order, SVU, featuring Busfield. And he is obviously known for his roles in The West Wing, 30-something, Revenge of the Nerds, and Field of Dreams. He's also married to actress Melissa Gilbert, known for her role in Little House on the Prairie. She also owns Gilbert's lifestyle brand House on the Prairie. Anyway, she released a statement just the other day condemning abuse in all forms and clarifying that the allegations do not involve the brand or its operation. The company expressed a commitment to safety and respect while also respecting the family's privacy. Now, Gilbert, through a representative, stated she supported her husband but will refrain from public comments during the legal process. Now, the investigation continues, and police noting that the boys may have been groomed. Busfield's team anticipates a vigorous defense, aiming obviously for a complete exoneration. A lot of stuff going on in the entertainment industry with relates to this stuff. And I don't care what's going on. I don't care if you're the director. Why are you tickling a bunch of little boys? All right. Now, he did turn himself in. It was a no bond hold, and it could be a day. Nothing's taking place today as far as the last time I checked. So it'll probably be in court by tomorrow. But I have seen a report that there was an allegation that there's another alleged victim, a female that was apparently touched inappropriately. Her dad has come forward and stated this, and it's going to be argued as an issue before the court when they set bond. Obviously, one of the conditions is going to be you're not going to be around anyone under the age of 18. So obviously, he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. We will give him that. Obviously, the defense already has something to work with here, and that is there's this allegation of some sort of retaliation or retribution for Busfield replacing these twins with younger actors the following year. Certainly, that's what the defense is going to look for when there's, what is the reason for these kids to make up these allegations? And if you got one, that certainly helps. It's a little more difficult when you think, no, I was the great guy. Kids love me. Really? Then why would they make these allegations against you if you're such a great guy, right? Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Like, only handled, a couple hundred of these type of cases. Next on the docket, Luigi Mangione's federal case is picking up steam. That's right, the federal case against Luigi Mangione, the man who is accused of premeditated murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on December 4th of 2024 in Midtown Manhattan, continues to advance through pretrial proceedings in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Now, Mangione faces 4 federal charges stemming from the incident, 2 counts of interstate stalking, one resulting in death, murder through the use of a firearm, and related firearm offenses involving the discharge of a firearm equipped with a silencer in furtherance of a crime of violence. Prosecutors, under the direction of United States Attorney General Pam Bondi, have announced their intent to seek the death penalty on the death-eligible counts. Mangione has pled not guilty to all charges and is currently detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Now, a significant pretrial motion hearing occurred on January 9th before U.S. District Court Judge Margaret Garnett. Now, during this proceeding, Mangione's defense attorneys, which include privately retained counsel as well as a appointed death penalty counsel, presented argument on several key issues. The primary focus for the defense motion to dismiss 2 of the 4 counts, the murder through the use of a firearm, count 3, and the associated firearm offense, count 4. These counts form the basis of the death penalty eligibility, as they require proof that the killing occurred in furtherance of a crime of violence. Now, the defense contended that the underlying stalking charges do not qualify as a crime of violence under the applicable federal law, as well as Second Circuit case law precedent, rendering the death eligible counts legally deficient. Prosecutors opposed that motion, arguing that the stalking conduct involved placing the victim in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury, which meets the statutory threshold. The judge did not issue a ruling at the hearing, describing the issue as complex and indicating that she would issue a written decision. The outcome of this motion is pivotal, obviously. If granted, it would remove the death penalty for Luigi Mangione as a possible penalty and the potentially accelerate the trial schedule as well. If it's denied, the case would proceed as a capital case with additional constitutional challenges to the death penalty likely to follow. Now, the hearing also addressed the admissibility of evidence seized during Mangione's arrest on December 9th of 2024 at that McDonald's where he was contacted in Altoona, Pennsylvania by police. The defense sought suppression of the items from Mangione's backpack, including the firearm allegedly matching the murder weapon and a notebook containing several incriminating writings contending that the warrantless search violated the Fourth Amendment protection guaranteed to all under the Constitution. Now, although the judge initially indicated that an evidentiary hearing might not be necessary, she later reversed course. So on January 12th, the judge ordered a limited evidentiary hearing scheduled within the next 2 weeks, likely in obviously late January here, prior to the next status conference on January 30th. The hearing will focus narrowly on testimony from an Altoona Police Department officer regarding the department's standardized procedures in December of 2024 for securing, safeguarding, and inventorying personal property of the arrestees in public places. The inquiry aims to determine whether the seizure and initial search of the backpack complied with established protocols, potentially rendering the evidence inadmissible under exceptions such as the search incident to arrest or inventory search doctrines. Now, these proceedings represent obviously some critical juncture in the federal prosecution. The ruling on the motions to dismiss the death penalty counts and suppress evidence could substantially shape the case's trajectory, including trial timing. Tentatively eyeing a jury selection to begin in September of 2026. If the case is non-capital, and later 2026 or early 27, if it is a capital case, and the ultimate sentencing exposure is a possibility. Now, Mangione separately faces state charges in New York, including second-degree murder and weapon offenses, following the dismissal of terrorism-related murder counts in September of 2025. So obviously, some watershed moments that'll be coming soon as it relates to the Luigi Mangione matter, and we'll see where things go with that. Nick Reiner, he had a conservator. What happened? That's right. So Nick Reiner, the son of the renowned filmmaker Rob Reiner and photographer Michelle Singer Reiner, was placed under a year-long mental health conservatorship back in 2020, several years prior to his arrest for the murder of his parents. Now, according to the reports from credible sources, including the New York Times, Nick Reiner entered this conservatorship governed by California's Latterman-Petrus Short Act, LPS, which facilitates involuntary psychiatric treatment following hospitalization. A licensed fiduciary, Steve Baer, was appointed to oversee decisions related to his medical care and medication. The arrangement, which typically spans 1 year and may be renewed, concluded in 2021 for undisclosed reasons due to confidentiality protections, obviously. What we do know is that Reiner had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and at times schizophrenic disorder, schizoaffective disorder, around 2020. He was prescribed antipsychotic medication that effectively managed symptoms such as hallucinations, paranoia, mania, and depression. However, the treatment produced significant side effects, including notable weight gain, prompting concerns from Reiner. Then, approximately 1 month before the tragic events of December 14th of 2025, his medications were adjusted to a different regimen at his request in consultation with medical professionals. Sources indicate that this change coincided with a deterioration in his behavior described as increasingly erratic, unsafe, and alarming in the ensuing weeks. His parents reportedly observed these shifts, but faced uncertainty in addressing them effectively. No temporary psychiatric hold was implemented during this particular time period. So as you know, Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, were discovered dead, murdered in their Brentwood, Los Angeles residence, having sustained multiple stab wounds. Now, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner ruled the deaths a homicide. Shocking, right? Anyway, Nick Reiner was arrested later that day near the University of Southern California campus and charged with the 2 counts of first-degree murder, including special circumstances involving multiple victims. Now, Reiner resided in his parents' guest house at the time, following a history of substance abuse, multiple rehabilitation periods, and episodes of homelessness. The evening prior to the incident, the parents accompanied him to a holiday gathering hosted by Conan O'Brien, motivated by concerns for his well-being. Attendees noted his antisocial demeanor and a public dispute with his father. People were concerned. Following his initial court appearance on December 17th, there was no plea entered. Reiner's private defense counsel, Alan Jackson, withdrew from the case back in early 2026, citing uncontrollable circumstances. Jackson emphasized his former client's innocence and emphasized that the legal process would establish the facts, asserting that California law supports a finding of not guilty, which means he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. Let's call it what it is. Anyway, the matter was reassigned to a public defender by the name of Kimberly Green, and the arraignment, originally set for January 7th, was pushed to February 23rd. Now, prosecutors have not yet determined whether they're going to seek the death penalty. A conviction could result in life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Now, obviously, there's cases going to show all the challenges with mental health issues and treatment and how we deal with it in the courts, particularly the complexities of antipsychotic medications and conservatorships. I mean, this is the classic case. This is going to be a huge educational experience for what people kind of in the trenches on a daily basis see when people have mental health issues. You have people trying to get them help. Sometimes the defendant with the mental health issues doesn't want to deal with those issues or thinks they're fine, they're cured, everything's great. And for whatever reason, oftentimes, kind of like the past performance is indicative of future results. Stop taking the meds, maybe something changes, they go back to drugs and it doesn't go well with the meds. And here we are. And then the question is, what do we do with them now? If they take their meds, they're good to go. They don't take their meds, they're a danger to themselves and to society. The question here is, obviously, there was a conservator, and that ended. The question is, why? And not trying to blame anybody, but sometimes, and I get it, okay? I remember my parents dealing with my older brother, and I just kept saying, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep doing this? And ultimately led to an estrangement. With both of my parents over all the stuff that I was there doing with my older brother. And all my dad would ever say was, well, if it's your kid, one day you'll understand. Thank God I haven't had to deal with those issues as it relates to my kid, but it was also my brother. And at a certain point you had to say, enough is enough. Get your act together. And, if Nick Reiner wasn't willing to get his act together and abide by the regimen and follow the doctors, at some point they had to let him go. And it really seems like the enabling in this particular case, I get it, the family had money, they had resources, they loved their son, they wanted to do everything they could for him. But at a certain point, you have to say enough is enough. And unfortunately, in this case, it came a little too late.